Hey everybody! Yesterday I went over to the PetSmart, and while I didn't find any of the fish I was looking for, I did notice a few things that I wanted to talk about. So on the way home I started doing one of my driving chat videos, and I started by talking about the inch of fish per gallon of water rule, but I quickly sort of devolved into stream of consciousness and just kind of got to talking about big chain fish stores and mom and pop shops and what to expect when you're buying stuff from them. And I just sort of rambled on about all of that kind of stuff. It is fish store topic related, but it never really goes anywhere other than me just sort of talking about fish stores for about 15 minutes. So that's the kind of video I normally would have put over on my Patreon page, but since the last two videos I've posted over there have not gotten any views at all, I thought I would just go ahead and post this one over here on my YouTube page. So let me know what you think about it. Like I said, it's just kind of a ambling ramble. I tell a story about the worst fish keeping advice I ever got from a big chain pet store, and just give a few little tips and pointers of what to be careful of when you are shopping at the big chain stores and the mom and pop shops as well. So as I said, it's a bit of a ramble, but if you're interested, give it a view. If not, I'll see you on the next one. Thanks. Hey everybody, I'm on my way home from PetSmart. And while I didn't buy anything today, I did want to mention something that was on my mind last time I was in there, and I never did get around to shooting a video talking about it. And that is the inch of fish per gallon of water rule. In that particular PetSmart, specifically, I have heard employees going over with customers, you know, their tank size and exactly how many fish they had in it, and they literally had a notepad and paper and were writing down, you know, you've got 6 neons and 2 mollies, and you know, these get this big and those get that big, and so on and so forth. And they were trying to figure out exactly how many more fish they could fit into their tank and so on and so forth. So this employee on this particular occasion, I thought, was taking this inch of fish per gallon of water rule a little too seriously, a little too literally. But the thing that really kills me is when you look at the tanks at the PetSmart, they give you some basic information about the fish. They tell you whether it's a community fish, whether it's aggressive or not, so on and so forth. And they also tell you its overall size and the minimum recommended tank size for it. And if you look at those numbers, they're just ridiculous. The three that I just saw, you know, while I was at the store just a minute ago that stuck out in my head was a peacock eel was listed at getting 15 inches and said the minimum tank size was 29 gallons. You know, now, to be clear, this is not the minimum tank size that you should take it home today in and then later on upgrade it to. PetSmart and their employees, especially in this one particular case where the employee was literally writing down, you know, listing all the fish this person had in their 55-gallon tank until they came up to 55 inches. They go by, this is the overall size of the fish, regardless of what it is now, it's going to be this big, and when it's that big, this is the minimum size tank it needs to be in. So when they say a peacock eel gets 15 inches and it can go in a 29-gallon tank, that's nonsense. Do not put a 15-inch peacock eel in a 29-gallon tank. That is way too small for a 15-inch fish. The other one they had listed was a Trinidad pleco, you know, standard common pleco, listed at 18 to 24 inches, 55-gallon tank. Their high fin spotted pleco they have listed at 14 inches and also have that as a 55-gallon tank. There was another one, the Chinese algae eater, they have listed as 11 inches and recommend a 29-gallon tank. A 29-gallon tank for an 11-inch fish. That's just absolutely ridiculous. So I guess the only point I'm really trying to make is that when you go to any fish store, you've got to remember that fish stores are there to sell fish. You know, if you go to a mom and pop store, you might get lucky. You might have a really good mom and pop store, or I just say mom and pop, you know, the one that I go to, the House of Tropicals, the one I like so much, is it's actually a couple of brothers that own it. It's not a mom and pop shop, but I know the guys that own it. I know their level of honesty. I know how they treat their employees. I know what they expect from their employees. So I know their employees there are not, told to lie to people. And if you don't know something, you refer them to another employee who does or something. Just, you never give them bad information. It's better to give them no information than to give them wrong information. And I know that. I've been shopping there for years and so on and so forth. But there's also, pet stores around here that are, you could call them the mom and pop, locally owned type stores. And they're not that scrupulous, and they're there to make money. Most people go into business and start a store not because it's their passion, but it's because they want to make a living at it. And so they want to make money, and you make money by selling fish and selling people products and selling people, clarifier, water clarifiers and extra filtration materials that they don't need, and, carbon and so on and so forth. So when you're going by the recommendations of fish stores, whether it's your mom and pop store or a big chain store, you always have to keep in mind that their goal above and beyond anything else really is to sell you fish. I've been told many a time, oh yeah, that fish will go great with, I was sold a firemouth cichlid because that'd be a great community fish to go in with all my other fish. That didn't work out very well at all. And there's been a lot of cases where I've brought fish home. My T-bar cichlid, for example, that came home for a 20-gallon tank because the guy that sold it to me at a very large fish store, if you're familiar with the greater Lancaster area in southern Pennsylvania, there is what basically they call themselves the world's largest fish store. I don't know if they really are or not. So if you're familiar with them or not, they sent me home with a T-bar cichlid to go in a 20 long open top tank because they assured me that the T-bar would be fine. And when I said I didn't know about the T-bar, it seemed like it might outgrow the tank, they recommended me, I can't even honestly remember what they recommended me at this point, but it was something that actually got bigger than the T-bar. It got like 4.5 to 5 inches, and they recommended that if I didn't want to go with the T-bar. They're trying to sell me fish at that point. And he did. I came home with the T-bar, and after about 3 months, I quickly realized that a 20-gallon tank was no way near going to be enough. 40-gallon was more appropriate, and even then, I'd ultimately wound up being in a 55 for the majority of its life. But again, I was sold that fish to come home and put in a 20-gallon tank. So with PetSmart or Petco or whatever the big chain store is in your particular neck of the woods, you got to take anything and everything they say with a grain of salt. And it really helps to go in there armed with your own information and have a good idea of what you're doing beforehand anyway, because you're either going to get somebody, well, you may get somebody that's completely honest and scrupulous and never gives you bad or wrong or inaccurate information, and they know exactly what they're talking about. That person may be out there, so let me not generalize. Most likely, you're going to get somebody that is trying to sell you something. They're not really going to know exactly what they're talking about, but they're going to try to sound like they do. When you ask, well, will it be okay with this? Of course it's going to be okay with that, so on and so forth. Or you very well could get the other end of the spectrum. I had someone tell me, this same PetSmart, and I've been shopping at this store for years and years. There's been a lot of employees that have come and gone in the years that I've been shopping at this particular PetSmart. But the employees do have the authority to refuse a sale if they think you're going to, take a fish home to a bad environment or something like that. I know for a fact that they have the authority to do that. I've been refused fish in there before. I had to go back the next day when an employee that I was familiar with was working to buy the fish because the other one would not sell me the fish. And it was some simple, I wanted to put a molly in a 10-gallon tank or something, and they absolutely refused to do it because mollies get too big to go in 10-gallon tanks, or, again, it was something trivial like that. It wasn't, I wasn't insisting that this Oscar will be fine in the, desktop nano tank I want to put it in. It wasn't anything like that at all. It was something that I'm done a million times. I can do this very easily. It's not going to be an issue. But it was a new employee. They were super overzealous. They didn't, know really much about fish keeping, but they knew they had authority, and they knew they could save fish's lives by not sending them home, to people that were going to kill them. And I would imagine they probably denied quite a few people fish until the manager said, look, don't abuse your authority. We're here to sell fish. You're going to have to accept the fact that a lot of people are going to take fish home into conditions that may not be 100% ideal by your standards. You need to get over it and let people buy fish. We can't have somebody that simply refuses to give anybody fish. Because when you get right down to it, the vast majority of the people that buy fish at a big chain pet store are not taking them home to optimal conditions and, weekly 10% water changes. And that's the way this person was. They were that overzealous that if you weren't taking them home to absolutely optimal conditions, they sort of viewed that as, animal abuse, and they certainly weren't going to have that on their conscience. They weren't sending those fish home to be killed by some amateur like me, So I wasn't going to argue with them. They weren't going to sell me the fish. They weren't going to sell me the fish. So I left and had to go somewhere else. But like I said, when you're at a big chain store like that, you're going to get a variety of different employees. You're going to get the ones that don't know much but think they know everything. You're going to get ones that, actually are pretty, knowledgeable, but are still there to sell you fish. So they're probably going to be a little more encouraging to take fish home than you really should, and so on and so forth. But even the official information that they have on their websites and printed right there on the tank, the stuff that comes down from on high, the stuff that comes down from corporate, the things that those employees that don't know anything, where they learn those things, that's their little pamphlets that they get from their training, and all that information, all that little information you get on your on the tanks and in the stores and everything, that all comes down from their corporate people. That's official. And they're officially saying you can put a 14-inch peacock eel in a 29-gallon tank, and they're officially saying you can put a 24-inch pleco in a 55-gallon tank. So that's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, that's just absolutely absurd. So I'm almost home. We're crossing over Main Street here. Now we're heading on down into my neighborhood. So I will tell, since I've had you this long, if you're still listening to me ramble on, I will tell you the story about the worst advice I ever got. I mentioned before about this. I bought some live rock from the Petco in Westminster, and I wasn't sure what I was doing. I asked the guy who assured me he had 35 years experience, and saltwater was what he really did. He sold these freshwater fish, but saltwater was his real gig, and so on and so forth. And so he told me in order to cure the live rock, I needed to take it home and put it in fresh water for a couple of weeks. Just a bucket of fresh water, no air hose, didn't need any of that stuff. Let it sit there for a couple of weeks, and then it would be cured, and I could put it in my reef tank. I could put it in my saltwater aquarium. And that didn't sound right to me. If I'm taking this live rock home to put in my saltwater aquarium, wouldn't putting it in fresh water kill all of the stuff that's on it? I need all that stuff to be alive. That's what living rock is. Live rock is the biological organisms that take care of all of the nitrogen cycle and everything in a saltwater aquarium. So that live rock has to be living. For me to take it home and put all of this saltwater acclimated rock into fresh water without aeration or anything, just stagnant fresh water, won't that kill everything on the rock? And he said, well, yeah, that's what you're trying to do. That's what curing it is. You want to get rid of all of the, worms and parasites. You never know what's on this rock. You don't want to just take that home and put it in your aquarium. You could be putting anything in your aquarium. So you take it home, you put it in fresh water, and that kills everything that's on the rock. That's the curing it process. And then once it's cured, you then put it in your saltwater tank. That don't sound right to me. So I went home and did a little bit of research, and I'm very little bit of research on Google, and I found out quickly that is just the wrongest thing that this guy could have possibly, given me. To cure live rock is literally when the rock is harvested from the ocean, it's just thrown up on the beach, and it lays out in the sun while the diver goes back and gets more, and so on and so forth. So by the time this stuff gets to their shop, it's been brutalized, and it stinks, and it's gross, and there's dead stuff all over it, and that needs to be healed. You need to cure the rock by letting all of that stuff die off, and you need to let that rock get back to being a healthy, living community by having it in the environment it's going to be in. You need to put it in a saltwater environment just like it's going to be in your tank, and you need to let all that stuff die off. You need to let it all crash and fall apart and let those microbes and all those organisms build back up. That's the curing it process, letting it heal from that original damage of being harvested. What this guy was selling me at Petco was already cured. It was in a tank, it was living, it had that purple coral growing on it, it was beautiful. It was ready to come home and put in my tank. What this guy was telling me to do was basically take it home, kill it, kill all the stuff that was living on it and in it, and then once everything was dead and it had no more biological filtration capacity, then I should put it in my saltwater aquarium while all of that dead, decaying, rotting stuff is just now in my saltwater aquarium that has no biological capacity to deal with it because it's not a living rock anymore. Like, that was the advice the guy told me. Take it home, put it in fresh water for a few weeks. Once you've killed everything on the rock, then it's cured, and you put it in your saltwater reef tank, and it'll be fine. That's how you're supposed to do it. So that was advice I got from a guy. He was the manager of the aquatics department at a big chain pet store, and he had 35 years experience in the hobby, and so on and so forth. So whenever you go into any kind of retail environment and somebody's trying to sell you something, just pretend it's a used car. When you're buying anything from anybody and there's a sales rep involved and there's somebody that you have to interact with, assume you're buying a used car from them and treat them as though they're a used car salesman that's going to say and do anything to get you to buy that product. Take everything with a very, very heavy grain of salt. So I'm home. I got my mail. I will see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching.